Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, new details on the Hyundai car battery plant raid in Georgia. South Korea plans to send a chartered plane to Atlanta as early as Wednesday to bring back workers detained as illegal immigrants. From 25% to 15%, the U.S. will apply lower tariffs on Japanese goods. And in return, Japan pledges to open its market wider to American businesses. The United States will join South Korea and Japan for annual defense drills starting next week. What's the goal behind these exercises? A key gathering of Pacific countries is turning into a power play. A major lawmaker in the Solomon Islands says it's all about China and Taiwan. That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. New details are emerging on the Hyundai car battery plant raid in Georgia. South Korea plans to send a chartered plane to Atlanta as early as Wednesday to bring back workers detained in last week's large immigration sting.
President Lee Jae-myung said Seoul would negotiate with Washington to achieve a reasonable resolution to the situation based on the spirit of their alliance. A Korean Air Boeing plane with 368 seats will fly from South Korea's Incheon to Atlanta. About 300 South Koreans were arrested, along with 175 others in the ICE operation. The Nikkei Business Daily reported that up to 9 Chinese citizens and 3 Japanese citizens were also among those detained in the raid.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including the Consulate General of Japan in Atlanta, is working to gather information and further understanding of the situation. We will continue to take appropriate measures to protect Japanese nationals.
Many workers say they were sent to the U.S. on questionable documents. This despite their misgivings and warnings about stricter U.S. immigration enforcement before last week's raid on a Hyundai site. For years, South Korean companies have said they struggle to obtain short-term work visas for specialists needed in their high-tech plants in the United States. They had come to rely on a gray zone of looser interpretation of visa rules under previous American administrations. But that changed in the early days of President Trump's second term. Some workers were reportedly denied entry to the United States under statuses that did not fully allow work.
The United States and South Korea have disagreed over the details of a trade deal involving $350 billion in investments. At a summit last month, South Korea pledged $150 billion in U.S. investments, including $26 billion from Hyundai Motor. Turning to tariffs, Japan says the lower U.S. levies secured in recent trade talks with the White House will take effect on September 16th. Back in July, both sides struck a deal. President Trump agreed to lower tariffs on Japan to a baseline of 15%. It's down from the previous rate of about 25%. In return, Japan pledged to open its market wider to American businesses. The deal includes Japan purchasing more U.S.-made commercial aircraft and defense equipment. The country's also increasing its U.S. rice imports by 75% and plans to buy $8 billion worth of U.S. farm goods and other products. Japanese outgoing Premier Shigeru Ishiba finalized the trade deal last week with the U.S. Ishiba resigned over the weekend. Ruling party lawmakers are preparing their bids to replace him. Here are the latest developments.
Ishiba announced the end of his brief time as Prime Minister on Sunday. He said he was taking responsibility for elections where his coalition lost its majority in both houses of Parliament. They were hit as voters showed their anger at rising living costs. Ishiba instructed his Liberal Democratic Party to hold an emergency leadership election. The frontrunners are Sanai Takaichi, who would become Japan's first female Prime Minister, and Shinjiro Koizumi, who at 44 would be the youngest leader in the modern era. Neither has yet formally announced their candidacy. Takaichi would be notable for markets as she stands out for her opposition to the Bank of Japan's interest rate hikes. She's also called to raise spending to boost the fragile economy.
The United States will join South Korea and Japan at annual defensive drills starting next week. The exercise aims to upgrade aerial, naval, and cyber capabilities against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. Freedom Edge is an annual drill focused on promoting regional peace and stability. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the exercise will be conducted in full compliance with international law. It follows last month's large-scale 10-day troop mobilization drills by South Korean and U.S. forces. The announcement comes after a dramatic appearance by the leaders of North Korea, Russia, and China at a major military parade in China last week. And in another part of the Pacific, a key gathering is turning into a power play. The U.S., China, and Taiwan have been excluded from the annual Pacific Islands Forum in the Solomon Islands this week. The head of the Solomon Islands Foreign Relations Committee says the move is, quote, all about China and Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party often pressures other countries and international groups to keep Taiwan out of global events. In recent years, Beijing has boosted its economic and security influence in the region, and under pressure from China, the number of countries with officials ties to Taiwan has dropped from 6 to just 3. China's digital surveillance system, the largest on Earth, takes center stage in an alarming new report. An Associated Press investigation reveals that U.S. tech companies have played a much bigger role in aiding human rights abuses than previously known. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports.
U.S. companies, to a large degree, have designed and built China's surveillance state. They did this by bringing predictive policing to China, technology that sucks in and analyzes data to prevent crime, protests, or terror attacks before they happen. The technology sifts through text, calls, payments, flights, video, DNA, mail, even utility use, flagging citizens as suspicious and predicting their behavior.
All of China's high technology is being used to monitor ordinary people.
The technology allows Chinese police to threaten friends and family and preemptively detain people for crimes they have not even committed. The Yang family lives in rural eastern Jiangsu province. Caught in a land dispute, they've been trying to seek relief from local officials by appealing to China's central government in Beijing. But this surveillance apparatus, based on American technology, monitors and predicts their every move, flagging them for detention every time they try to go to the Chinese capital.
They follow me. They constantly surveil me and follow me. Wherever I go, they follow me to that location.
Yang Guoliang lives alone, a virtual prisoner in his own house.
We don't feel free. Personal rights are being stripped.
His wife and younger daughter were arrested last year and now face trial for disrupting the work of the Chinese state, a crime carrying a sentence of up to a decade in prison. Former Xinjiang government engineer Norelia Blees saw firsthand how surveillance technology flagged thousands of people for detention even when they had committed no crime.
The technologies provided by Western countries have caused very, very deep trauma to us Uyghur people.
For years, Blees kept silent, worried about his family's safety. But now that he's in exile in Germany, Blees is speaking up.
Their algorithm uses information from your past experiences, such as the number of times you've visited a mosque, flights you've taken, trains you've taken with suspects, buses you've rented, and any comments you've made on WeChat or other platforms like Weibo.
The AP report, based on leaked emails from a Chinese surveillance company and government files, show U.S. tech giants including IBM, Dell, Cisco, Seagate, Intel, Microsoft, and others sold tools or services to Chinese police. Some even pitched their products using Communist Party slogans about stability maintenance and controlling key persons, and named programs that stifle dissent, such as Internet Police, Sharp Eyes, and the Golden Shield. IBM, Dell, Cisco, and Intel say they follow export control policies. Seagate says it complies with all relevant local laws. Microsoft told AP it found no evidence of knowingly selling technology to the military or police for the Golden Shield update. Some U.S. companies ended contracts with China over rights concerns, but fears remain over where technology sold to Beijing will end up. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Associated Press investigation says U.S. tech firms helped build China's vast surveillance state using predictive policing tools to fuel its human rights abuses. The Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, is moving to ban 7 China-based test labs. These labs will no longer be able to certify electronic devices being used in the United States.
The federal agency says the 7 labs pose national security risks because they're owned or controlled by the Chinese Communist regime. The agency will also not renew recognition for 4 other Chinese labs whose accreditation has expired. All electronic devices that emit radio frequencies require authorization to comply with FCC rules. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr says the move aims to restore trust in the agency's equipment authorization process and eliminate security threats. Carr also says President Trump is leading the charge to reshore America's industrial capacity and safeguard critical supply chains from foreign adversaries.
Vietnam's exports to the U.S. and imports from China both dropped 2% last month. That's according to the country's customs data released Tuesday. The U.S. imposed a 20% tariff on Vietnam on August 7th. Following the move, Washington added a 40% levy on goods transferred through Vietnam to the U.S. Notably, the U.S. market is Vietnam's top export destination, and China is its largest source of imports, especially for materials and equipment used in the country's manufacturing sector. The U.S. has accused Vietnam of serving as China's transshipment hub to skirt U.S. tariffs and trade restrictions. Trade tensions are rising from China over to Europe. China plans to impose a tariff of more than 60% on pork imports from the European Union following an investigation. The EU pushed back on Friday, opposing China's decision.
According to our assessment, that investigation was based on questionable allegations and insufficient evidence, and thus was not in line with World Trade Organization rules for initiating an investigation even. So, we will study the details, we'll decide on next steps, but I can categorically assure you that we will take all the necessary steps to defend our producers and industry.
China's provisional duties could be up to 62.4%. They could take effect on September 10th and impact over $2 billion in goods. Chinese authorities said they made a preliminary determination that Europe is dumping pork and pig byproducts on the Chinese market. China launched the investigation last year, soon after the EU imposed tariffs on China-made electric vehicles. Trade tensions spiked between the EU and China since then, and they have currently got multiple trade disputes across a range of industries.
Dumping is when a country sells products abroad for less than it costs to make them or for less than they sell at home. It's a practice China is frequently accused of. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.